that button. Good morning, and welcome to Coon Valley Memorial Day program. My name is Wes Guy, and I'm the Coon Valley American Legion Post 116 Commander, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies. I'd like to make a special thanks to all the veterans in attendance, and thank each and every one of you for your service to our country. Thank you to the village of Coon Valley for their support and cooperation. We could not accomplish today's activities without the support of the village and community. A special thanks goes out to the auxiliary for everything they do throughout the year and in support of the American Legion family. Also, I would like to thank you all for have taken time out of your day to spend a moment of your holiday weekend with us in honoring those who have died in service of our country and in the armed forces. Their sacrifice is what ensures our freedom as a nation and is something we shall never forget. This is the mission of the American Legion, the VFW, and many other veteran service organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that those who are able, please stand, remove your hats, and place your hand over your hearts as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. To start today's program, I'd like to welcome Coon Valley Village President Carl Hendrickson to the podium for his remarks.
Good morning and welcome to the 2023 Memorial Day program. Thank you as always to the American Legion Coon Valley Post 116 for their hard work in organizing this event. It's so nice to see the new memorial wall restored after being damaged in 2018 flood. I'd like to thank you for joining us and honoring those who fought and paid the ultimate sacrifice, ensuring that we enjoy the freedoms we have today. Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome Coon Valley American Legion Auxiliary President Julie Nelson.
Today is the most expensive holiday on the calendar. Every hot dog, every burger, every spin around the lake, every get-together with friends and family is a debt purchased by others. Today is not about all the soldiers who have served. That day comes in the fall. Memorial Day is in honor of those veterans who died in service to our country, in honor of those whose moms never saw them again, whose dads wept in private because their child was never coming home, whose spouses raised kids alone, whose children only remember them from pictures, and for those who never got the chance to start a family at all. Memorial Day isn't simply a day off. This is a day to remember that others paid the ultimate price for every free breath that we ever get to take. Poppies are worn to remember these soldiers who gave their lives in battle, because poppies are the flower which grew on the battlefields after World War I ended. This is described in the famous poem In Flanders Field, which will be read here today. Thanks to all who wear their poppies proudly. On behalf of the Coon Valley American Legion Auxiliary, we invite you to lunch in the Legion Hall after the program. God bless all the men and women who have died while serving our country, and God bless America. Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome the Sons of the American Legion Commander Kalmansky.
Good morning, everyone. Each year, the Sons of the American Legion sponsors a Memorial Day coloring contest for the Coon Valley Elementary children. First, I would like to thank the principal, teachers, and Lisa Olson for taking time to help with this contest. The winners were selected and the prize were given to the students at the school. I will announce the winners of the contest now. Please hold your applause till I'm completed. Kindergarten, first, Kinney Drath. Second, Cindy Fensel. Third, Finley Alman Dixon. First grade, Harper Herlinsky. Second, Owen Ostrom. Third, Easton Wilk. Second grade is Joey Pilger. Second, Marcia Needfeld. Third, Zion Macy. First/second grade. First is Tucker Beadle. Second is Cannon Hansen, sorry. Third is Paisley Schlicht. Third grade, first Elia Adams. Second, Colin Boland. Third, Brady Jorstead. And fourth grade, first is Jack Connert. Second, Amaya Roble. And third is Millie Needfeld. Please get a applause for the kids. Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome Coon Creek Area VFW Post 10-532 Commander Gary Grethel.
Good morning. Welcome from the Coon Creek VFW Post 10532. Today, the veterans of foreign wars joins a grateful nation in honoring and remembering the soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, and Coast Guard men who, as President Lincoln so eloquently put, gave the last full measure of devotion. The 1.5 million members of the VFW and its auxiliary ask each American to take time today and every day to reflect on those who paid the ultimate sacrifice supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States of America. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as at this time I would ask if you are able, please stand and remove your hats while the Westby High School vocal group, directed by Tara Lyons, presents our national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as our invocation by Father Bijou from St. Joseph Ridge Church.
Let's take a few moments of silence to pray for the brave men and women. Lord, as we gathered to celebrate the Memorial Day, to honor our brave men and women who gave their lives in service of United States of America, we pray for them. Lord, we thank you for their very gift to us. Our fallen soldiers and heroes have made the ultimate sacrifice. Lord, help us to keep them in our thoughts and prayers, not just on Memorial Day, but every day. Bless our day, bless our country, bless all its citizens, and be with us. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
We will now have the reading of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address by Westby Middle School student Rachel Friedland.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated, far above the poor power to add or to detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the goal, to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion, so that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth.
Thank you, Rachel. Now, Westby Middle School student Jackson Jorstead will read the poem In Flanders Field.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the lark, still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Jackson. One of many programs of the American Legion is Badger Boy State and Badger Girl State. Last year's delegate was Kari Ofti, selected in 22. For those that weren't aware, the American Legion Auxiliary sponsors the Badger Girl State, and the American Legion sponsors the Badger Boy State. So now I would like to welcome Kari Ofti to the podium to speak about her experience last year at Badger Girl State. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm the delegate that was chosen for last year's ALA Badger Girl State that took place at UW Oshkosh on their campus. It was really fun and very unique experience, and I'm still friends with a lot of the girls that I met while I was there. And all the delegates from around the state were placed in the dorms on campus for a week, and each floor was considered a different city, and altogether we made up the state of Badger is what they called it. And it was pretty much a mock government, and it was very interesting to see that and how like stuff actually works, because I literally had no idea. It's really nice for young women to get a chance to do this and see how positions of power work. And I'm so thankful to our wonderful auxiliary ladies here for sending me and letting me represent Coon Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Kari. This year's Badger Girl State Delegate is Elizabeth Guy. We look forward to hearing about your experiences, Elizabeth. Another program that happens around the state is Freedom Honor Flights. And here at Coon Valley, we had 2 people participate in the last Freedom Honor Flight. If you're able, Rodney Berg and Herb Cornell. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Jim Munch. He is a graduate from Purdue University in agriculture and in business management. Jim became an officer in the United States Army Corps of Engineers through the ROTC program at Purdue. He went on to serve in few countries in Europe during and after the Berlin crisis. He later left active duty and became a La Crosse area to work for Train Company in their international division. Jim was in the Army Reserves, where he commanded an engineer company in Alaska for 6 years. Jim then later moved to Coon Valley in 1978 and became a Coon Valley American Legion member. He has been for the past 43 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Munch.
Julie Nelson actually took the whole first part of my talk. So it's going to be shorter than I had planned, which will be good for all of you, although the sun is not bad today. The other thing that's a little difficult here is that this is more than a 180-degree audience, so I may move around. This is going to be a very athletic talk. So anyway, the guys at the American Legion asked me to say a few words that sort of expand on the concept of Memorial Day. Julie's litany description of Memorial Day was 100% right on the money. We're here to honor people who were killed in service to their country. But I have a long history with Memorial Day, and like all of you, my idea about Memorial Day is affected by that history. So at a very shallow level, there are some of us who look at Memorial Day as a way to get 2 mattresses for the price of 1. Others look at the race car drive, at least I'm from Indiana, we always did this, that goes on in Indianapolis, the Indianapolis 500. There's a lot of picnicking. After all, it's the beginning of summer. And in fact, that's the whole reason we celebrate during this time of the year, because before Memorial Day, when I was a child, it wasn't Memorial Day, it was Decoration Day. And we went and decorated graves. And you do that in the spring, you bring the new plants out, you trim the old plants, you get rid of the thatch and the turf. That's what you did on Decoration Day. During the course of a whole lifetime, you may have had events happen to you that are more than simply decorating graves. A loved one that went away to war and didn't come back. A loved one, and this is outside of the scope of what we define as Memorial Day, but a loved one who went away and came back a different person. Or a grandparent who did exactly the same thing. For a lot of us, that is what Memorial Day means. For many of us, Memorial Day also means citizenship. It means the people that stayed here after getting their load of candy are enacting an act of citizenship. For me, it was all of those above. Well, maybe not the shopping, and I never liked the race car going. But it was a little bit more. I used it as a focal point to really understand what it means to be a citizen and how that is predicated by all of the sacrifices that made it possible for me to even take the leisurely time to think about those sorts of things. So it's hard to talk to this group. Not only are you very spread out, but your ideas, your concepts of Memorial Day are also all spread out. The younger they are, perhaps the more shallow is your view right now, and the older, perhaps, is much deeper. And everything in between. The band members who stayed, there's only 2. Do you still have civics in school? Great. Because civics is a place where we begin to learn about this idea of citizenship. So because there are so many different routes to where you are in your head today, sitting here under these trees, way far away from me, spread all over, I'm going to tell you my journey, and if there's something you can all learn from it or be motivated by it, great. And if not, if somebody else would like to come up here and give your story, the mic is open. Anybody? Okay, I'll take that as a go-ahead. So, my first recollection of Decoration Day was basically during the Second World War. I was lucky enough to be born into a family in Indiana. This is my mother's family, the Crow family, who were Decoration Day people. It was rigor, it was duty to go to the cemetery in LaFountain, Indiana, run by the International Organization of Odd Fellows, and do homage, pay respect to the ancestors of our family and to all of those who were buried in that cemetery. So I can remember as a youngster during the Second World War having my Grandma Amy, who we simply called Amy because she liked being called Amy rather than Grandma Amy, who is also the leader of our family and the moral compass of our family, would load us all up in the car of the day. The first sort of recollection I have was, I'm not a car person, but the doors in the back opened the wrong way, and it was black, and it was noisy, and it had a very small trunk. But we would fill the trunk with plants, with cleaning materials. There was water at the cemetery, and we would clean gravestones, trim around the graves, replant the plants, and take the old ones away. And then we would, not me, because I was too young, but they would talk about who was buried in each of the places and what they'd done in their life. And it was especially important to my grandma because she had a brother that was injured in the First World War and a cousin who never came back from the First World War. And really, the family doesn't even know where his remains are. So it was very important to her. And this was my first lesson about Memorial Day. I don't know what you call this, but there's a main headstone for each family. And ours was a big gray thing made out of metal. And when you hit it, it made a sound a little bit like a muffled bell. And I can remember, my job at these things, by the way, was just to be a pain in the neck. I was 4 or 5 years old, and I can remember demonstrating to everybody how loud this tombstone could sound if you hit it really hard. And I can remember Amy turning on me with her crooked index finger and saying, "Jimmy, get off of that monument, show some respect." That word has been a constant word in each of the Memorial Days, then Decoration Days for many years. It wasn't changed until, I think, Julie might know, the 60s or the 70s, something like that. That has been a constant word in my recollection, in building my memory bank of what Memorial Day really means. So that went on until I graduated college. So that's from the time I was 4 years old until the time I was 18, 19 years old, something, whatever you are when you graduated from college. But the tenor of those visits to the cemetery became much different as the Second World War went along, because the gold stars were plopping up in people's windows. My dad had been drafted at the age of 30 and served on an attack cargo ship in the Pacific and had a bad time with it. So they became more and more tense. And then there was a lull, and then they became more and more tense as Vietnam veterans came back. And then I was sort of out of the picture, floating around to other cemeteries, which I'm very glad I did. When I got into the service and went to France, I was stationed in France, right in a part of France that encompassed the Maginot Line. This was supposedly the final barrier, the wall, if you will, to keep the Germans, the Nazis, from taking France. Well, it didn't work, but it's still there. And our caserne, our post, our base was in a place called Toul in France, which is right on the Maginot Line. And also halfway between a U.S. Army Veterans Administration cemetery in Épinal, France, and another one in Verdun. And as an active military, we took folks down there, soldiers, GIs, and did what these guys back here do so well, and that is formed an honor guard and celebrated Memorial Day in Épinal. And we always kind of stayed around and looked at the graves and tried to imagine who the people were that were under the ground under these markers. Very little is shown on the typical U.S. military marker. It's religion, name, rank, date of birth, date of death, and the honors that you may have received as a soldier. So we'd study these things for lack of something else better to do, and imagined what the real lives behind each of those really was. And it became sort of a learning experience for me. And later, after I got out of the military, I worked for the train company in their international division. I traveled all over, and I ended up going to other military cemeteries. I went to the one in Manila, which is unlike the others in that it's built in a circle. I remember that. It was like one of these labyrinths that people walk in for what reason I don't understand. I remember going to Punch Bowl on the way back from a trip. Phyllis and I went back to Punch Bowl. And always in all of these cemeteries, there is not only the crosses and the stars of David and the crescents, etc., or not. There's another way that they've marked these graves. But there was always a memorial to the people whose remains were never found, but who died in those wars. And if you stop and think about what happened in the Pacific, a lot of the people who died in ships that are at the bottom of the ocean. Their names are listed there too. In addition to those memorials, there was always an explanation of the wars that were fought that led to the deaths of the people in those places. And so it was a history lesson for me. And a lesson in the incredible, when you see a bunch of crosses, bigger than a U.S. battalion, much bigger, standing in attention, not chewing gum, which was good, which was one of my big problems as an officer, to have people not chew gum. They take on, when you walk down the rows and see the names, You learn things. You learn that each of them was a person who laughed, who cried, who had a husband or a wife, and it's all gone. And that is Memorial Day. We think about that, or we should. It's an element of being a citizen. Well, marching along, so to speak, Phyllis and I on a trip to Hawaii also went to a non-VA military cemetery in a little teeny town on Maui called Makawa. And Makawa had maybe, I don't know, 200 tombstones. And we were shocked that in those tombstones, 90% of the names were Japanese names. And we'd lived in Japan a couple of times and could recognize them immediately. And it was shocking. You think of these graves overseas, and you think Americans with American names that we recognize are the ones that fought. And it's not true. And furthermore, if you look at the American names, quote, American names like Munch, you know that their ancestors were probably not Native American. They were not American at all. Time to stop, I think. And that's a lesson in itself. And so, after wandering around all these cemeteries, you must think I'm a crazy person to wander around cemeteries. But I learned things from cemeteries. I'll take us back to LaFountain, Indiana. Amy's gone. My mom and dad are gone. And the last of our family who participated in the Second World War was buried last year. It was Jeannie Dermer, who lived behind the post office here the last 12, 15 years of her life. She participated as what we have often referred to as a Rosie the Riveter. She worked in a factory that made bomb sights as a middle manager, 21, 22-year-old graduate of Indiana University who became a middle manager in a bomb site company. And it was a big blow to me because she and I could talk about these things. She was 96, I'm 84. We were close. We were close our whole lives. And we could talk about these things. We buried her year before last, back in LaFountain, amongst the graves of all the people in our family who had died in the service or died after the service. So, okay, there's my wanderings around. What did I learn from this? Never mind, it's only a little bit at the bottom of the page. First of all, I learned e pluribus unum. And back in the day, everybody took a little Latin. E pluribus means out of many or from many. And unum, uno, dos, tres, that unum means one. It's on our currency. It means out of many are one. If you go back to Makawa and see that the soldiers whose graves are in that cemetery were Japanese citizens, or Japanese who were not Japanese citizens but American citizens, that's e pluribus. When you look at the names on the graves in Epinal and see Schultz and Meyer, these are German descendants who were fighting the Germans. When you see and I had these in my company, people whose names are obviously from the Far East. We had a guy named N.G. Nobody could pronounce so we called him N.G. He was Sergeant N.G. So, lesson number 1, e pluribus unum. It is a lesson in civics, not a Memorial Day thing, but it springs from Memorial Day, because they also died. The second thing that I learned, is the appreciation that foreigners have for the war efforts and the deaths of American soldiers. I spent an afternoon with a French farmer one time when I was in the service, and this subject came out of his mouth almost immediately. he was a child during the Second World War, and he saw the Germans come and take over, and he saw the Americans kick them out. And he was internally thankful. When the kids took me to the monument in Manila, it was just a bit away from the train office in Makati. I didn't ask to go there. They wanted me to go there. There are 18,000 people, American soldiers, buried in that cemetery that liberated the Philippines from the Japanese. It was an act of thank you for them to take me there. Lesson 2. Lesson 3 is that for every casualty, and I don't even like the word casualty because it depersonalizes who's laying under the sod. For every casualty, there was a family, there was a spouse, there was a mom and a dad, there was laughter, tears, and a life. The fourth lesson from all this running around and looking at cemeteries is that and talking to veterans and talking to people in the Army and talking to family members at family reunions in Wabash, Indiana, it is clear that for every casualty, there were casualties of a different sort in the families that supported those people. 37% of the people who came back from World War II had PTSD. 75% of the people who came back from Korea had PTSD. 35% of the people who came back from Vietnam had PTSD. And we have not solved this problem. More veterans have committed suicide since 9/11 than have been killed in the wars that have ensued between 9/11 and now. 4 times. So, third lesson, this memorial, if I had my way, would be rewritten to include those deaths as well, because they were clearly caused by what happened in the service. And the fifth thing is the incredible arbitrariness. I don't even know whether that's a word. You high school students should be able to tell me that. I think it is. Of who died. My dad was on this attack cargo ship. When he went to basic in Great Lakes, at Great Lakes Naval Training Station, he became very, very good friends with a guy very similar to him in character, who also ended up on an attack cargo, as a matter of fact, in the same fleet, in the same squadron. And my dad could actually see that other ship as they supported attacks on the Pacific Islands. One day, a kamikaze went into the gun turret where that man served and where my dad served on his, the USS Oberon. And he watched it go down. They both served. They both were patriotic. They were both scared out of their skins. One died, one came home. Damaged. My dad had PTSD badly, but came home. And that's never seemed fair to me until about 4 or 5 years ago. I got thinking about it. The reason that we memorialize those who were killed is because we can't talk to them. We can't comfort them. We cannot put our arms around them. But those who came back, damaged or undamaged, we can, and we should. And we went off the rails after Vietnam. We couldn't do it. And we're off the rails now. We turn our backs on these wars. We shouldn't. My opinion. You can do what you want. But it's not right. and is not being a good citizen. So, final lesson is why people go into these jobs at all. Are they jobs? No, they're not. They're acts of patriotism, if you will, acts of being a citizen. And this was never brought home to me so much until one day I was standing at the train company next to a Vietnamese guy that I'd known. He was an engineer that worked for the train distributor in Vietnam named Cang Nguyen. And he was studying to become a citizen. And I was looking at the pamphlet that he had, and I turned over, and of course I came to all the rights that citizenship bestow upon you. The 9 rights that are taught to people who want to become citizens. Turned the page, there were 9 responsibilities. And the third one down was to defend the nation. And so whether you were drafted or not drafted, whether there was a draft going on or not, if you served, it was one of the responsibilities of being a citizen. And let's face it, a lot of people got out of going to some of the wars where there was a draft. But those who didn't get out of it and actually went were performing an act of incredible citizenship. So to me, that's what this day is all about. Fleshed out in its totality, it is an act of love as a citizen of the United States.
Next, I would like to welcome Charlie Nelson to the podium for an update for the Coon Valley Veterans Memorial.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome everybody here today on behalf of the Coon Creek Area Veterans Memorial Committee. We're a small committee of 5. 3 of them are listed in the bulletin: Melanie, Rowley, Rod Ofty, who am I forgetting? Myself, and then we got Ron Huff and Lee Narrison on the committee. And I hope you all appreciate that everything's back in place again. The last item we have, I was running around this morning getting signatures of those 5 members to pay our last bill for getting everything back in place. That bill's for $17,300 and is our last installment. So it'll be all paid for. And that's because of all of you guys. Anybody that gave $1, $10, whatever, or just wished to see it back in place, it's here once again. So thank you. It's been almost 5 years. It's been a 5-year process almost to get that thing back in place. I just want to remind people that everybody who served can be on this memorial if you were in the Coon Creek Area Fire District. And if you are not on the wall and would like to, please see one of us members of the committee, and we'll make sure you get on there. I also need to thank Don Rowley for all the time he spent down here. And he also was able to go to Valley Market and got the red flowers that you see sprucing up the flower bed out here. We also got to thank a couple village employees. Whenever we've had problems down here, John Lungard and Jason Goings have been here and have done what we've asked them to do and helped us along. And then finally, I want to thank Mike Martino, who did the sculpture of our soldier. He took it upon himself a couple days ago on his own to call Commander West, and he wanted to come down here and clean up the soldier and wax it because it probably hadn't been done since before the flooding. And he came down there and did that. So on behalf of the committee, I thank everyone and wish you a very great Memorial Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Now, I'll call upon the Cub Scout Pack 319 and Boy Scout Troop 322 to decorate the crosses of our deceased veterans. Next, we'll have the Scouts present crosses of our veterans that have passed away since last Memorial Day. Donald Barr, Alan Bushik, Richard Ng, Ed Gorman, Stuart Peterson, Floyd Story, John Thirk, George Schuster, Richard Regat, Thank you, Lisa, and your team. At this time, I'd like to direct your attention to the west while we, Coon Valley American Legion and Legion Rider member, Navy veteran Brian James lays a wreath in Coon Creek to honor those who were lost or buried at sea. Thank you, Brian. And today's flutist was Benny Goss from Westby Area High School. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask if you are able, please stand as we salute our departed veterans. Sergeant at Arms, take charge. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. Thank you for taking the time to honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice that guarantee our freedom and liberty. Thank you.
There's a meal inside, or do you want me to?
I probably skipped over something.
Oh.
Dang it.